Hello everyone! We are out here today in the front yard to talk about holes, but more specifically about basins. And we are in the front yard because you are about to see the worst basins I have on property. So after I released the introduction video, I had somebody ask me what exactly is a basin and why on earth should I even care about them. And then I realized that not all of us are necessarily coming from the same background, don't have the same knowledge base, and I thought perhaps it would be worthwhile to create a small video that kind of talks a little bit about what I personally have learned about basins and what they are and how to make them. And if you happen to want to have more videos where we talk about different things, different concepts in permaculture or landscaping, let me know, and if we actually have any information, I can certainly put a video together for you guys so that way we can share the information that we have and learn from one another. So to get into it, what is a basin? When you look at the definition of a basin in the dictionary, it's actually not too dissimilar to how they're used in landscaping or agriculture. By definition, a basin is a dish of some kind, a container that is wide and round and can contain some kind of liquid. And ironically, it kind of is describing the best way for basins to exist in landscaping. In landscaping, basins fall under what we classify as earthworks. Earthworks are any type of system or structure that you put in place that is modifying the land. Usually you'll hear things like swales, contoured swales, off-contour swales, check dams, those kinds of things. Those are all usually housed under earthworks. And we typically do earthworks as a means of capturing, moving, and diverting water to wherever we want it. Water, especially out here in the desert, is by far one of our biggest and most important resources, and so it is not uncommon for us to do everything we can to capture every drop of water on property before it leaves. And part of doing that is installing basins. Basins are important because out here our dirt is incredibly denuded and compacted, which means it's hydrophobic, or the water just does not soak in. And so ideally you do want basins to be kind of wide or flat at the bottom, so that way it has the most space to allow water to infiltrate or seep into the ground. We often call this watering the ground, and it's important because the more water you have in your ground, the easier it is for your plants to grow. It gives them more water to access, so you don't have to water them as much, and you're basically using all the water that nature gives you for free by letting it stay in the ground instead of washing downhill somewhere else. So that's the reason why you want a basin. It collects water, it helps to recharge the water in the ground that you live on. It also helps to water your plants because it is recharging the ground that you live on. It does waste less water because basically if you put your plants close to your basins, you can just water in that little hole and have it water all of your plants instead of trying to get the water to stay put while the water's rolling down the slope away from the plant that you're trying to water. And so now that I've explained what a basin is, let's talk about why the basins in the front yard suck. So first of all, this originally didn't look like this. My grandmother, when she moved in, she wanted to make a little arroyo wash type thing in the front yard. And originally the ground that was beneath this pipe that I'm sitting in front of, it used to be a couple inches below the pipe. But because of all the erosion and the runoff, when I moved in, the ground was actually halfway into the pipe. And so we had to dig down and get rid of all the dirt underneath of it. She also put a bunch of round river rock, like this, in here. And the FYI, if you ever try and build a French drain, don't use river rock because all it'll do is tumble around and interlock in a bad way. And so in order to clear out this entire area, we had to dig out a bunch of river rock, and that's what you see right here is some of the river rock that we've pulled out from the front yard. And the reason these basins aren't ideal is because there's no width to them. They're very channel-like, very much like a ditch. In fact, the person that was helping me build these When they originally did this, there was nothing in between these basins to stop the water from just going straight on down the hill. So when they built it, they had cleared out, they basically made a big ditch straight down to the end of the front yard, and so we had to put stuff back in so that the water actually would stay in the front yard and not leave. Because the basins are so straight, the water basically kicks up a bunch of the dirt, and so it have a hard time growing anything down here because between the river rocks, making it hard for the roots to have anywhere to go, and then the force and sediment that built from this pipe behind us, most of the plants in this front basin do not survive or succeed for very long. There's also really heavy clay in here, and as you'll see, it rained yesterday morning at 2 a.m. so it's been over 24 hours, and you can see that the ground is still very wet, and because of the clay it likely will stay wet for a couple days, but it's still not an ideal setting for the plants. There is some flax up here, and we have coated this area with seed and it just has not taken. However, that's not necessarily the basin's fault, and it doesn't necessarily mean that these basins suck, and here's why. I want to show you this wolfberry. This wolfberry has been here for years, and by years I mean probably at least 5 or 6 years. And I don't know if you know much about wolfberries where we live, but when they aren't doing well, they basically revert down to just a singular stick or twig sticking out of the ground. And for most of the past 5 to 7 years, that's what we've had for this wolfberry. But in one season with these basins working, as you can see, it has completely exploded. I cannot believe the amount of growth we have gotten off of this thing in under 6 months. And I blame that wholly on these basins retaining the amount of water that they are. The same goes for our ocotillo and the mesquite tree. They have way more growth on them and way more leaves than they usually do by this time of the year. A lot of times these plants suffer because they sit right in the sun for most of the day. And so when we are in this section where we're not getting a whole lot of rain, basically in between our winter rains and our summer rains, it's not uncommon, especially for the ocotillo, to struggle. But as you can see, all of the plants up here that are not in containers are doing just fine. And that is because these basins do hold water. They do provide water to everything around them. And even though they are not the ideal shape or structure, they work. And that's the biggest take home I want you to get from this video today, is that even if it's not perfect, if it works, it's still worth doing. It's still worth trying. It doesn't have to be perfect to be effective, and you can always try again. You can always make these basins better. Nothing says that I can't completely move the dirt around and have something different, which is something we're working on. We are not sure if we're going to keep the basins as they are, simply because of how difficult it is to grow here, so we're debating putting a water cistern up here, but we are going to be digging out basins along the sides of this front yard, so that way as the water comes off the roof in other places, it can collect and water the plants without completely just washing down the driveway. So, to sum everything up, basins are earthworks. They collect water, and ideally they will have a wide base and a smooth, gradual side to reduce erosion and basically increase their structural integrity. This is so that water can infiltrate or seep into the ground, because the more water in your ground, the less you have to provide the ground and subsequently your plants with water. We use this in the desert especially because our ground is relatively hydrophobic because of the desertification and compaction that we typically experience. So if you basically lock the water up in a little bowl, in a nice hole as it were, you are able to let that water slowly sink into the ground so that it can water things. I have another video that I'm working on slowly. It's been in the works for like 2 weeks now, where I talk about how to add basins to pre-existing trees and how to make sure that you can do the best for your trees when adding basins to them if they were put in before you came in and you want to improve your setup, or you want to let the sky water your plants for you. So look forward to that within hopefully the next few weeks. If you have any other questions about basins and you wanted to, or if you want to see any other videos similar to this where I kind of give you some basics on a topic, let me know and we can always work on that. And the update for the garden is coming along. I know that we released that video last week, but we actually planted the garden at the end of March, so We are almost at the 1 month mark, so we will be updating you on that progress soon. And I hope that everyone's staying cool as it continues to get warm, and we will see you all later. Somebody got hungry, guys. Look at that.